Okay, welcome back everybody. So last time we looked at the input function, and the input function actually allows the user to interact with the program, okay? And we see it again here. We see inputs and we see prints. So at this point, we've used both the input function and the print function. Now the input function does the same thing as the print function in that it will show something to the console. However, the input function is waiting there at the console, waiting for the user to interact with the keyboard, okay? We also, in previous tutorials, took a look at variables, okay? And variables are simply placeholders. And so at this being the fourth tutorial, please look back and review the other tutorials for what a variable is and what it's doing. And if there's still some discussion on that, I could provide some online links in the discussion. Anyway, into the comment area. I'm used to the classroom. So with that being said, let's take a look at what this program is doing, because we also said that the program knows how to uh, evaluate expressions that are math related. So addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. The first time we did this, we assigned value to variables and let the computer simply evaluate them and then print out the output. So if something was 5 plus 5, the computer would evaluate that expression and say, well, 5 plus 5 is 10. That was easy, right? And it wouldn't give us the 5 plus 5 because it's actually a math operation. And it gave us the result of 10, okay? So with this, we're actually going to combine those two ideas. We're going to combine input, get allow the user, you and I, to interact with the computer program. And so we're just going to create two variables, number one and number two, and then we are going to add them together. Okay, we're going to literally do the math operation. We're going to add them together, but this time I'm adding another function to our toolbox. Okay, this time it's the int function. Okay, and down here I'm doing this two different ways so you can see it. The first way is I'm going to get the input first, okay? And by default, when we last talked, I said the input defaults as a string, okay? But the problem with the string is it's a string. It's not a number. Python is not seeing it as a number, as in something to manipulate, to add, subtract, multiply, and divide. It's seeing it as if it was just a piece of text on a document. Okay, even if it's a number, 5, 10, 25 million, it doesn't matter. It's seeing it as a piece of text in a document. It's not looking at it as a number to do anything with. And hopefully that makes sense. But in order to do a math operation with it, we actually have to convert it to a number to do something with. Okay, so we have to convert it from the string to an int. And in order to do that, we actually have to use the int function. And the int function looks like this. Okay, whenever I talk about a function or a method, I'm using parentheses. Okay, and then what we're manipulating is that stuff inside the parentheses, typically called the argument, but we'll get there. Okay, so this is what this is. So int parentheses, and then I'm going to use the number one and number two, and I'm going to put number one in this function, number two in this function, and that means that those strings are going to be converted to a number that I can use to do a math operation with. And so with that being said, let's take a look at what the sum is. The sum is now considered an int because it's evaluating an expression that's using ints or integers, okay? And thus, it's then going to say, well, this number one and this number two, again, the math operation is being done here, not here. This statement is simply the print statement that says the sum of whatever number that is and the other number is. And I could easily have done this. You know, this number plus this number is equal to, but these are all print statements. And I'll just give us some space so we can say it. And then sum as the int. So this is a string, this is a string because it's pulling from these up here and not these down here. And this sum is this guy right here, okay? So you can see how the variables that we're using are being applied to our print statements. Now, I'm going to do something similar, but this time I'm going to do it at the point where the input is taken. So this is called a nested function. Just take it for what it is right now, a nested function. It's a function inside of a function. Okay, a nested function. What does that mean? It means that I have the input function, because you see the input keyword plus the parentheses that go next to it. It's inside the float function. So let's take a look at this as a separate idea. That's the float function, okay? It's going to do the same thing. It's going to convert a string that has been inputted by the user that may look like this, 3.5, okay? Input up here is a string. I can't do a math operation with a string. I need it as a number. So ints or floats. Floats are numbers with decimal points. So I'm going to use my float function, and I'm going to, inside of that, put my input function. Now, you have to be very careful with your code, because if the functions both have parentheses, okay? So at the tail end of this, you have to make sure you have the right number of parentheses, because you have the input function, parentheses, the float function outside of that. So there needs to be 2 parentheses going in that direction. And I think you understand that. So I'm going to do the same thing. I am going to convert. So you can see number 1, number 2, number 3 are all floats as the variable sees them. The data type is float, the variable sees that. They're going to be inputted as strings, converted to floats, and then I'm going to do a math operation because I can, 1, 2, and 3. And that the expression will be evaluated, whatever that is. Again, the computer at this point doesn't know what those numbers are, and right now neither do I. And then I'm going to output it as the sum is. All right. So with that being said, let's run this program. 4 and 5. So the sum of 4 and 5 is 9. Cool. And I think that's it. Good job. All right. Oh, that's what the problem was. I was looking for what in the world? Okay. And the reason it was sitting there, but it wasn't giving me an output. So you got to be really careful with your code. Meaning that you saw that I had an input function there. So it was waiting for something, but I didn't know what to do with it because it wasn't telling me to do anything with it. So I had to get rid of it. Good learning point there. Enter number 3, 4, 45, and 6. That works too. So we saw that the float has a decimal point. Now I should have, let's run this again. So I'll use 5 and 6, and then let's use decimal point values to actually see the float concept work. Okay, and that works perfectly well. Okay, so again, this time we're using all of the tools that we've learned before: variables, input, print statements, the integer function, the using ints, using numbers, the float function, using numbers for math operations. Good stuff. Okay, so with that, I'll see you next time.